and contemporary issues facing the United Nations, this video focuses in particular on peacekeeping operations, so let's get started. The blue helmets or blue berets of peacekeeping forces are probably the most iconic image of the United Nations. Interestingly, the use of peacekeeping forces is not specifically mentioned anywhere in the UN Charter. Rather, the Security Council's role in addressing threats to international peace and security are outlined in two provisions, Chapter 6 and Chapter 7. Chapter 6 provides for the peaceful settlement of disputes through Security Council intervention in the form of negotiation, mediation, arbitration, or judicial decisions. Under Chapter 6, the Council may investigate disputes or may make recommendations to parties regarding specific settlements. Chapter 7 is broader in its mandate. Under Chapter 7, the Security Council may decide what measures shall be taken to maintain or restore international peace and security. Chapter 7 permits the Security Council to authorize sanctions against countries found to have disrupted the peace or to authorize the use of force against them. Because of this, peacekeeping operations are sometimes referred to as Chapter 6.5, falling somewhere in between the peaceful settlement of disputes under Chapter 6 and the use of force for collective security under Chapter 7. The deployment of peacekeeping forces is normally authorized by the Security Council in response to a request by a member state. During the Cold War, the standoff between the US and the Soviet Union limited the deployment of forces to regional conflicts between relatively small states. Peacekeeping forces would be deployed to monitor ceasefires, literally placing themselves between the opposing sides. They had limited or light armaments and did not present a combat threat to either side. Rules of engagements were developed in cooperation and were subject to the approval of the host governments. The end of the Cold War changed the nature of peacekeeping operations. The traditional mission of monitoring the peace evolved into broader missions of peace building and peace enforcement. At the same time, the complexity and size of operations increased. The first peacekeeping operation was deployed in 1948 to monitor the ceasefire between the then newly created State of Israel and its Arab neighbors. That mission, the United Nations Truce Supervision Organization, or UNTSO, continues to operate even today. Since then, there have been 62 other UN peacekeeping missions. Of those, 14 are currently still underway. As you can see from this map, the vast majority of peacekeeping missions have historically been and continue to be in Africa. The United Nations currently has 14 peacekeeping missions underway. These are operations in Haiti, where the UN forces are working with the government to help develop national policing capacity, strengthen justice and prison systems, and improve the protection of human rights. Cyprus, where since 1964 UN forces have maintained a buffer zone and de facto ceasefire between Greek and Turkish Cypriots. Kosovo, where the original mission to disarm groups and protect human rights has expanded to a focus on facilitating an inclusive society for all ethnic groups in the country. Kashmir, where since 1949 the United Nations has maintained observer forces along the India-Pakistani border to report ceasefire violations. Golan, where since 1973 UN forces have monitored Israeli and Syrian separation. Lebanon. Established in 1978, the UN Interim Force in Lebanon originally monitored Israeli withdrawal from Lebanon, but since 1973, it's continued to provide protection and assistance to the local population. The UN Truce Supervision Organization was the first UN peacekeeping operation authorized in 1948 and has been in continued existence since then. Its operations include a number of countries in the Middle East, Israel, Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria, and it supervises armistice agreements, monitors ceasefires, and prevents escalation between parties. The UNTSO also serves as a ready deployment force capable of providing supplemental peacekeeping forces in other operations should the need arise. The UN mission in Western Sahara was established in 1991 in order to oversee the ceasefire and, in theory, a referendum on the future of Western Sahara, which continues to be claimed by both Morocco, which controls about 3/4 of the country, and a Mauritanian-supported government which claims the remaining 1/3. The UN maintains 2 separate peacekeeping operations in South Sudan. The first is located in the Abyei region of the border of South Sudan and Sudan. This operation was established to monitor and support the delivery of humanitarian aid and is authorized to use force to protect humanitarian workers and civilians in the area. The second is the UN mission in South Sudan, which was established to support the government of South Sudan, protect civilians, monitor and investigate human rights violations, support humanitarian assistance, and to promote the implementation of peace agreements between South Sudan and its northern neighbor. The UN peacekeeping mission in Darfur in Sudan is intended to address local conflicts, protect civilians, and support delivery of humanitarian assistance in the region. In the Democratic Republic of the Congo, UN peacekeepers are charged with protection of civilians, protection of human rights, disarmament, facilitation of humanitarian access, and demobilization and reintegration of former combatants into society. The UN peacekeeping mission in Mali was authorized in 2013 in order to monitor the implementation of the ceasefire, facilitate political reconciliation, and assist in the reintegration of displaced persons, as well as to deliver humanitarian assistance and protect human rights. And finally, the UN mission in the Central African Republic was deployed in 2014 in order to protect civilians, prevent violence, and support the fragile infrastructure in
Thanks for watching. Subscribe, comment, and like. Have a good one.